Hi there, this is Elizabeth with Kinship Collaborative, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about wedding planning burnout. What is it? What is it, and how do I know if I have it? And I think it's a really important discussion because so many of the newlyweds I work with are undergoing so much stress. There's a lot of emotions and intensity, and wedding planning burnout can be a framework for understanding what you might be going through during this time. I want to first say that wedding planning burnout is not the same thing as experiencing emotions. So, emotional experiences during engagement and wedding planning, that's totally normal. You might be feeling sad and then excited and then disappointed all in one day. That is different than wedding planning burnout. The burnout piece, as we'll learn in just a moment, is sort of the accumulation of ongoing stress over time. So I just want to normalize that having emotions during your engagement is totally normal. There's nothing wrong with it. I would encourage you to really work with those emotions and get curious about them, to understand how to regulate them, how to make sense of them. But don't worry too much if you're experiencing emotions. Wedding planning burnout is something different because it can really take a toll on your psychological well-being and actually your physical well-being as well. So first, let's define it. Burnout and wedding planning burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress, meaning that the stress is happening over time, over a period of time, and that it feels honestly like too much. Subjectively, it just feels like this is too much stress. And it occurs if you feel overwhelmed, if you're feeling emotionally drained, tired, fatigued, and if you're just sort of like over it, like I am done with this. That might be a sign that you're experiencing burnout. Now, wedding planning itself and being engaged is sort of ripe for burnout, and there are a few reasons why. It is an often long, drawn out process that occurs over a period of time, sometimes months, sometimes years, during which wedding planning can sort of become a part-time job, right? You're keeping up with the demands of your life, whether you're working in school, you're in relationships, you're like a normal person, and then on the side, you're planning a wedding. And that's an enormous task and responsibility. So, juggling the two, especially when engagements last a year plus, that chronic and prolonged process is a setup potentially for burnout. There's another reason that wedding planning can be ripe for burnout, and that's because of the emotional aspects of engagement. I feel like kinship exists for this reason. The emotional aspects and the psychological aspects of engagement do not get talked about nearly as much as the wedding planning part. It's sort of like you think you're just going to get engaged and have all this fun planning a wedding for a year, and then boom, you'll be married. And that is such a fallacy. That's not how it works. From probably before you were engaged all the way until the time you're married, and actually forever, there are underlying dynamics going on, relationship dynamics, interpersonal dynamics, not only between you and your fiance, but the families involved, the siblings involved, the friends involved. There is your own shift in identity. The emotional parts of getting engaged and planning a wedding do not get enough attention. And so, what often happens is you're spending all this time planning a wedding, and there's this undercurrent of emotionality, of identity shifting, of dynamic shifting that we often don't have a framework to make sense of. And that kind of just goes unspoken. And I think what happens is because we're sort of like just supposed to be happy, like, yay, I'm engaged, celebration. There isn't a lot of space or normalization for the fact that you might be having a hard time. You might be having emotions that you didn't expect coming up. And there might not be a lot of people in your life to talk to frankly and say like, wow, this is much harder than I expected. So a lot of newlyweds really don't feel that they have the support to understand like what is going on for me emotionally. I thought this was supposed to be happy. So, and that's everything that kinship does, is to educate, to empower people to understand what are the psychological and emotional processes going on. Without that support, you may be headed for serious burnout. COVID, let's talk about COVID and how COVID itself is a setup for serious wedding planning burnout. Sometimes burnout happens because we are working towards something in the future, but we're not having the fruits of the enjoyment of it right now. So you might be saying, I think I'm planning a wedding for June of 2021, but I'm not sure it's going to happen. And I'm not having any of the fun yet. I'm not having a bridal shower. I'm not able to have a bachelorette, whatever it is, or just the long game isn't enough to sort of offset the stressors in the moment because you're not having the joy so much. That can be a setup for burnout as well. So here are some signs that you might be experiencing wedding planning burnout. If you are exhausted, physically, emotionally, energetically, and if you're feeling sort of cynical about the whole process, if you're like, I'm just like not even into it anymore. Like, this isn't even worth it. Like, what am I doing? If there's any sort of cynicism creeping in of like, God, what is this all for? If the stress is outweighing the fun and the joy, that could be a sign you're burnt out. If you're struggling to keep up with managing planning or even just the emotional parts with other aspects of your life, if you're at work and you're consumed with thoughts and stressors about wedding planning engagement, if you are having a hard time taking care of yourself on a basic level, if you are prioritizing wedding planning or just being stressed over the things you would do like working out or having fun, any of those things, that could be a sign of wedding planning burnout. If you're experiencing physical issues, if you're getting headaches, stomach aches, if you're having sleeping issues, that can definitely be wedding planning burnout as well. I know for me, I was so stressed during my wedding planning. Again, one of the reasons I started Kinship Collaborative was because I did not sleep. I could not sleep, and I really had a hard time eating, which is so unusual for me. I'm a person who always has an appetite. I always eat, and I was so stressed I could not eat. And accidentally, I lost weight because I really wasn't eating. So if you're having physical issues, that could be related to the stress and the burnout of the experience you're having. So that is the definition and the understanding of wedding planning burnout. And so today, if you're listening to this, if you're like, that is me, Elizabeth, you are speaking to me, it is okay. Don't panic. The first step towards everything is having understanding and insight and awareness. So just non-judgmentally, I invite you today to think about how we've defined wedding planning burnout. If you think there are aspects of it that resonate with you, don't panic. Don't judge yourself. Be gentle with yourself. We will, in the coming weeks, explore some other aspects of this experience. So next week, we will be releasing a video on how to prevent wedding planning burnout. And then the following week, we'll have a video on working with the pressure of wedding planning, which has a lot to do with wedding planning burnout. And just continue to come back and join us as we are really here to support you through this time. Our mission is to help newlyweds get through this time in the most self-care and relationship care oriented way you possibly can. So take this information and don't panic. Anything you're thinking, you're going to be able to get through it. There are tools and resources available, and we're going to give them all to you. So feel free to let me know what you think about the concept of wedding planning burnout, and make sure to join us back next week where we'll dive a little bit more into, okay, I think I'm experiencing this. Now tell me what to do. What do I do next? Thank you so much for joining me, and have a great day.